guys, it's time to start talking about pushing. How, when, how will I know? All the things. We got this. So, pushing. Now, there's a lot to unpack when it comes to pushing, especially if you're a first-time mom. If you're a second-time mom, you might feel a little bit confident, but you also might not have been happy how your pushing went with your first baby, and you might want to try it a little bit differently. So, one thing to note is that kind of like, we're talking about progress in labor earlier and baby station and how you can be fully dilated, but that might not mean that it's time to start pushing. So let's unpack that. I like to encourage my families to do something called laboring down. And what that means is that just because baby is at your cervix and you're completely dilated doesn't mean that it's time to start helping your body push that baby out. It could mean that it's time to allow baby to continually making that gradual journey into your pelvis and hold off pushing until you feel completely ready and on your own. Now, benefits of laboring down are that you reduce your risk of tearing because your baby's going to have that time to gradually stretch out those tissues and not be like forcing onto those muscles and all those things as it comes out. Now, there are times when you need to do that curl over your baby, push as hard as you can, pushing. In my experience, that is seldom needed when mom has labored down for a good long time and is waiting for what we call the fetal ejection reflex. Now, fetal ejection reflex, if you've ever experienced it, you know. If you haven't experienced it, I'm going to try my best to describe it, but truthfully, the best way I can describe it is when you're having it, you will have no doubt in your mind. It is not something that you can control. It is just something that kind of happens. Very similarly to, when you feel like you need to poop, you can hold that off for a while. And you can hold it off for a little bit longer, a little bit longer, a little bit longer. But if you've been holding it for a while and then you sit down on that toilet, it is game over. You can't just be like, oh, never mind, I'm just gonna hold this in and walk away. Nope, it is done. You held it in for too long and your body is like, nope, this turd is leaving the station. It is very similar to the fetal ejection reflex. And I wish there was something more graceful and adorable that I could compare it to. But when your baby is like about to come out, it's not like you can just daintily hold your baby in and go and do something else. Like, no, it is just, this baby's coming out. Because remember, we talked about your fundus and the power of your fundus. It is pushing with or without your help, okay? Your whole labor, it's pushing, 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 pushing. And it's the same is true when it's time to bring baby out. So a lot of the times, if you wait until you get that fetal ejection reflex, then you don't need to do super hard pushing to get baby out. It's more like nudging baby out. Now, first-time mamas, I don't want you to hold on to all this information too hard. When it's your first-time baby, it is very challenging to know when to push, and especially when we get to a point where mom's been laboring for a long time and we're really worried about energy levels, then it might be best to kind of encourage and help your uterus along in getting baby out. And that's totally fine. We're not going to panic, okay? Because like I said, sometimes you do need to do that. And especially if you got a bigger baby or their head is not applied perfectly, sometimes your body needs that help. But as long as you can and as long as things are going well, labor down for as long as possible, okay? It might stretch out that experience a little bit longer, but again, reduces your risk of tearing and reduces your risk of having to purple push, which is just where you're holding your breath and bearing down, all those things. One thing that will also help is what position you push in, okay? So, and again, that's gonna be different based on which way baby's facing, when you start pushing, all the things. Sometimes getting into a good squat is good, hands and knees is always good, standing, all the things. But one thing that I wanna kind of help reframe some things that you might be thinking is to realize that when you do a wide squat, and in fact here, we're gonna do an experiment. I changed my mind. I want you guys to sit down. I want you to put your hands under your sits bones. So those are the bones that you actually sit on. It's these right here, okay? Hopefully you're sitting on these and not on your tailbone. You're supposed to sit on your sits bones. I want you to sit on those bones and I want you to point your knees out and see what happens with my arms here. Same thing happens with those sits bones, okay? Now when you point your knees in, See how my elbow's open? It's exactly what your sits bones do too. So, and you can feel that happening. So whenever you are pushing, consider like, you know, let's say that you are delivering on your back, which is a very common way to deliver. If you're delivering on your back, point your knees inward a little bit, okay? Now, we're not talking about like close your knees, okay? This is closed knees, but point in a tiny bit. And that will help open the bottom part of your pelvis and help bring baby out a little bit easier. But again, most empowered positions are upright, hands and knees on your side. All these are going to be better than laying on your back, because when you're laying on your back, you're pressing down on this area and you see how that closes off. But when you're upright, this has room to move and open to help baby come out. So that's pushing.